Good morning, hunters of the night. So last video, there's some very strong opinions there, but there seems to be a trend in my comment section, is Nocturne too woke? Did the liberals ruin another great show? Or just put too much political agenda in there? Did I just get baited into talking about socio-political comments? Yes, I did. I got fished hook, line, and sinker. Great. So hopefully I don't come up smelling like piss and shit from the sewer waters that is online political opinions. Also, just general spoiler warning. And another thing, you can roast each other in the comments. You can point out dumb things. I'm all for that. But do not use slurs. Do not use acronyms for slurs or metaphors for slurs, Just be better. Be decent. Otherwise, call someone the scum of the earth, a smelly little butthole. But just come on, please. Now, just to restate what I said in my last video very briefly, the TLDR, Castlevania Nocturne was a solid 6 out of 10 for me. It suffered from, poor pacing, bad story writing, and just not really good dialogue. There was no wit. The themes and everything just got a bit too muddled. The themes weren't properly explored, they were introduced, but none of them really dived in, and that makes the entire show suffer. However, the animation is fantastic, the music is delicious, and I'm generally excited for Season 2. I enjoyed it. They ended on a pretty good cliffhanger, so hopefully it gets better. But honestly, I was surprised. I had my expectations a bit too high, and that's on me. But what confuses me is actually the surprisingly high number of people who are blaming Nocturne for being too woke and having just too much political agenda behind it. So, over the course of the last few days, I rewatched Nocturne. I wanted to try and get the same feel that about half of my comment section did. But I couldn't see it. All I got was the same feeling that I had was through my first run-through of Nocturne. It's a patchy story, missing the first few things that made the first show a masterpiece, but it's not woke. So now I want to address some of the most glaring issues that some of y'all are wanting to blame the show for. I truly want to try and convince you to think differently. This is not some agenda, just a show with complex themes that were not tackled well or were not even introduced properly. I feel like some people are so fixated on a viewpoint that rationalizes everything within that political lens. I will, however, agree with you that some of the critics and the absolutely insane critic reviews for Nocturne, it's insanely high numbers for that show. And I'll be honest, it doesn't deserve it. That hurts to say, because I want to love this show like I loved the first one. But it does not deserve just high praise from critics. Let's be totally honest with ourselves, it just doesn't. That's one thing I generally hate about many critics that are like, oh, they talk about slavery, 10 out of 10. And I'm like, okay, but why is it 10 out of 10? Because I've read some of the critic reviews, and most talk about the themes of, class disparity and slavery, but none of the critics kind of explain how these themes were explored out or anything. And the reason they don't is because the themes weren't introduced, and that's all. None of the themes were explored in meaningful ways. So why should it be a 10 out of 10? A perfect 100 score. It just doesn't deserve it. Well, if you look at the user reviews, and lo and behold, they bring up the themes and things that I've been trying to say. A patchy story with beautifully animated scenes, but it's missing too much. The pacing is so bad. But let's move on, because trying to get critics to be honest is like trying to get blood from a stone. So, the loudest issue by far was Annette and the race swap. It seemed like many comments constantly brought up the race swap as the problem, and that they were wanting to kind of drive Annette as the main character instead of Richter. That her being completely different from Rondo of Blood was a travesty. This is the most brain-dead, dumb fuck thing that I've heard. No one cared about OG Annette except OG Richter. She was a damsel in distress, but I mean, come on. No one wants something so uninspired like a damsel in distress, as something as serious as in Castlevania. Because the first Castlevania show, there's some serious themes, a lot of things that can be explored. But I'll be totally honest, it seems like you're arguing over a headline for your online echo chamber. Like, you just not paying attention. I'm glad that they gave Annette more depth, more culture, and more importance. They had to do so, like early on in Nocturne, to kind of build up her background. And we are exploring things and seeing them from like a totally different perspective now. Just arguing over an adaptation's race is silly. Like, Nocturne isn't a lore for lore, pixel for pixel recreation of the original franchise, and that's fine. I'm totally cool with that. I encourage it. I mean, like, I even saw people complaining about Olrox, like, bro, what are you, like, he was a dude in a purple suit of armor that turned into a lizard man in Symphony of the Night. Are you pissed that he's not like Mark Zuckerberg? He's not a real-life lizard man? Instead, they bring Aztec culture, like real-world culture, that brings a lot more depth, and it explains why he resents, like, authority, or why he has no respect for people who claim to be like gods cometh down from the heavens to save the world or like enslave it. Like, he just doesn't give a shit about those people. So it kind of like puts the whole Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire, and it wants us to think about like the whole picture. It really gives him some depth. He's one of the few characters who actually has depth. But like, moving back onto Annette, I haven't seen or heard one good reply as to why people are so mad about Annette being black. My biggest reply to this would be like, hey, Annette in Rondo of Blood was not a well-defined character. Like, all we got was what she looked like and that we had to save her. But that's it. And I mean, like, if we had OG Annette in Nocturne, how would she play into Nocturne Richter's like storyline? Like, where would she be raised? Would she be raised with Richter? Would she fight with Richter? Because she was just a damsel in distress. Like, so how would she fit into place? You know what I mean? And like, I have absolutely no issue with black representation or any representation, especially if they are done well. While I didn't enjoy all of Annette's story, out of the three main characters, hers was the strongest one because she had the most ground to cover compared to like the well-known Richter and Maria. Do I think it was a good representation? Not really. It was like a solid 4 out of 10. They didn't double down on things that they really needed to. But like, this isn't the Triss Merigold in the Witcher series, like Netflix series. Like, they didn't take a fan favorite from one of the biggest characters and turn her into something that she isn't. Like, if you look at book Triss Merigold and like her obsessive behavior over Geralt, they didn't do that. All they did was like, they traded her for a new look, and then they like tried to put her in the best light possible, which I admit is an awful way to introduce representation going through like with a very well-established character. What it comes down to is how you represent the character and the culture that you bring into the role as an actor, and there just was nothing in the Marigold like character. It just made her good. Oh wow, yeah, cool. Now let's go back to Castlevania. If they had like race swapped a well-established character, like let's say Dracula, well, I could like understand where your point is coming from, but like it doesn't change the whole lore of an actual Castlevania like mainstay. So Annette and Olrox aren't established. They don't have the lore upon lore that these other two characters like Maria and Richter do. They have the liberty to still tell an interesting story and include like a whole new culture to that story. So why are you mad that these characters that didn't get a lot are getting a whole new lore to explore that they've never had? Like, all you got with Olrox in Symphony of the Night was, he's a purple man, and he is the ruler of the upper castle. He turns into a lizard! Cool. Now he was like an Aztec revolutionary who fell in love with a Native American dude, and then they sided with American revolutionaries. I'm like, oh shit, okay. Nice. I wish we got to see more. But nice. You know what's wild is that Castlevania, like Powerhouse, has done something like this before. They took a twink from Curse of Darkness and changed him into something incredible. They turned Isaac into a Muslim man struggling with his faith, and how he eventually like culminates into a wonderfully masterful character. So like an absolutely beautiful character story. I loved it. So this silly race swapping issue is just like the most like moldy bread complaint that I've seen. Like, are you pissed off about Drolta and her original design? Like, I'll show her original hag design if you want. But if you're not, why? Like, excuse me. Explain to me where the differences are, and like, with Powerhouse Studios like changing Annette, what message are they trying to get across? Because it just doesn't come off as woke to me. Like, it comes off as an adaptation. It's a poorly started adaptation, but I have hope that they can bring the writing back and like really explore the things that we didn't get to do. Because like the basic like slavery story, it wasn't fully explained. Like, why are all the vampires slave owners? It really should have been like doubled down on insane how it all is, because how it's portrayed in the whole French Revolution, it's like Carmilla won. Like, they already rule the world, because everywhere you look like people in power, they're vampires. Why? Why? Explain it to me. Also, if they were so adamant about making black characters stronger and better than, let's say, like, white characters, why is a hero a white man using a whip to, like, kill people of color? I'm just saying it probably wouldn't make sense. That would be, like, the whole backtracking of their whole ideology. And before you say, well, liberals are just stupid, they're retarded, I don't think they're that stupid, okay? People have brain cells, okay? So, don't know where that all plays into. Yeah, nice. Another huge thing that I want to talk about was the dreaded gay agenda. Now, I got flashbanged by Mizrak Cheeks just like all of you. It was unexpected and honestly surprised the fuck out of me. Did it surprise me because they are gay? No, it's just because there was no build-up. Like, this could have been such a good love story if Olrox and Mizrak had just a bit more depth put into them. Because I would have ate that shit up and asked for seconds, please. If they had just explained how they went from, like, questioning the divine to questioning who's the top or the bottom. But people were livid that there was gay people. Like, I mean, hey, it's France. Well, what do you expect? A hey-o up top. Ha ha. Got 'em. Finger guns. All jokes aside, no one is forcing you to watch the show. You have a right to your opinion and your freedom to simply choose something else to watch. But pretending that the gay is being shoved down your throat like someone is holding a gun to your family's head is silly. What does Powerhouse gain from showing some Mizrak cheeks, besides my complete and undivided attention? Because that man is peachy, dummy, thick. I get why he's a man of God. Seriously, this man was blessed with the ass of a Roman statue. But that doesn't really push a specific agenda. Instead, the whole scene focuses around, like, the abbot's betrayal and, like, his dealings with Urzabet. And Olrox is, like, subtly questioning, like, Mizrak to find out more about the abbot and his ability to create night creatures. Now, like, I could argue that this could be, like, Olrox manipulating Mizrak. Perhaps Olrox is, like, simply biding his time and collecting information. There's, like, not enough here to build upon. I don't really see themes that are, like, demonizing heterosexuality. I don't see anything exploring how, like, homosexuality liberates and changes a man of the faith. Like, I'll admit, this scene was thrown in there extremely suddenly. They had tension during their courtyard fight, but, like, Powerhouse never explored the chemistry, or, like even explained, like, how it was built up. Like, which I said before is horrible pacing. But it's not a part of, like, an agenda to push people away from more traditional thinkings or lifestyles. This, like, goes back to more representation, but it's not even remotely on my radar of being woke. Like, they could have represented Mizrak and Olrox even better. But really, like, the best gay representation goes to Edouard. Like, he, without a doubt, had the best representation because it's subtle. You would never have known if he was gay, and honestly, you wouldn't have cared because his story is so interesting. And he's such a good character. He's, like, one of the few that are in this show. But my going back, my main question is, like, what does having gay characters have to do with impacting the show or how you viewed it? Because it doesn't feel like it's being shoved down your throat. I don't see it as like Euphoria or like how some other TV shows like portray homosexuality. It feels like some of y'all are just being too sensitive about it. Yeah, like going back to like Olrox and Mizrak, it's just shitty chemistry that had no build-up and expects us to like fill in the blanks, which just doesn't work. And the only other gay scene I saw was Edward talking about missing his like gay lover, or like him being afraid of dying and like never seeing him, which is something very relatable. Like, you know, missing your partner, being worried about death, that's like a human experience. That's not like a gay woke bullshit thing. So I don't know. I'm kind of tired of talking about that one. I don't know how. There's a fucking gnat in here and I want to punch its fucking wings off. I wish I was a karate master. Because it's like getting all in my face as soon as I start talking. But then it'll go to my coffee cup like... I don't know. It's freaking me the fuck out. To end this all off, I kind of want to talk about masculinity. Like one of the last reoccurring things that was in my comments. My sweet baby boy Richter. God! He was so just honestly unrelatable because of the shitty pacing. Like, here is a boy who, he lost his mother, he sails to France, and he grows up hunting vampires. I mean, he's like 19 in this show, and he's presumably been killing monsters since he got properly trained. But, like, how was he trained? No fucking clue. There's a huge plot hole. We don't know. So, Richter is supposed to be, like, the type of man who kind of, like, suppresses his trauma with massive amounts of, like, false bravado or, like, fake confidence. You know, I can do anything. You can see that in almost everything that he does. And it's kind of like an awful look that leaves him, like, crying and, like, running away from responsibilities and just in general preventing him from succeeding as he should. So, like, damn, that was a nasty cough. No more cough. Oh. Damn. I'm not gonna cut that out. That's staying in there. Ooh. Anyway, anytime, like, Richter is challenged or undermined in any way, he, like, kind of runs away. You can see this with, like, Annette and the, like, the kitchen, plan scene, you know, before they go to the island. And, like, definitely with Olrox, like, he's just running away, pissing and shitting and screaming the entire time. Now, before we go further, this is a good start for a masculine role model. And, like, I know he comes off as, like, fragile masculinity, but that's, like, that's kind of the point. So, like, let's just breathe and kind of zoom out and look at the whole. So, Richter has been suppressing his trauma, and he's never faced it. He's still the boy who's, like, running away in America. But this character arc should be, like, him accepting his role, like, doing everything he can within his power to protect his, like, family, his home, his community, and, like, coming to terms with what happened between him and his mom and, like, basically his whole life up until he's 19. The problem with the show and why it ruins Richter's story arc is that it just gives him a random power-up just because he got mad enough. Like, was the scene fucking gorgeous? Absolutely. 100%. Where he, like, blocks the Warhammer with ice and then burns through it with fire. That is awesome. I love the music. I love everything about it. But what it's teaching you is that if you give into your emotion, if you give into that tide of rage, instead of dealing with your problems, then you're gonna be great. That's not it. That is not, like, true masculinity and what you should be striving for. So the big response that I've seen from people who think the show is woke is that Richter is just so obnoxiously, like, fragile masculinity, a very meek man, so that all the women can stand out. Now, I'm sorry. I don't see that. I can understand why you're upset, especially after seeing, like, man's man Trevor and his whole story. Like, a man who lost hope, regains it, and fights for what he believes in. But near the end, like the end of Nocturne, that's where Richter accepts his role. He starts to, like, standing out, and he isn't trying to prove everyone that, like, oh, I'm fine, I've handled all this. Like, no, he's stepping up to it, and he's handling it as he should, as a man. So he starts doing his job. He starts showing up. That's masculinity, baby. Like, be there, control your fear, and fight. Stand your ground for your convictions. Protect your family. Protect your community. This is something that, as dudes, that's like our fantasy. Like, that's what we want to look up to. Like we did with Trevor. So, was Nocturne poorly written? Yeah, 100%. Like I've said many times. But the themes are there. The theme there for Richter is like it's begging us to understand where our trauma is coming from. Because even though we are men, we still experience horrible things. We don't get the same help that we should. We pretty much just shut up, try to bury it, and move on. That's the theme. That's why Richter has the false bravado. So that's what the show is trying to give you. It just missed the mark with how it was presented. And that's sad, because that's a very important theme. I truly wish that they would have focused on just a few things instead of like the 10 different themes that they wanted to focus on. It really muddied the water. Like the whole French Revolution, I had no idea what was going on because at first I thought like the show started with the beginning of the French Revolution. But then they're showing revolutionaries, they're winning towns, but then they're not winning towns because people are throwing bread at them and killing other revolutionaries. Like, that whole thing was glossed over, and it is so sad because that's a really big historical event. But, yeah, they just need to, like, focus it for next season. Like, really slow down. You know, it's okay if it builds up to that. So, whatever. But to bring it all back, was Castlevania Nocturne woke? I really don't think so. I'm open to talking about it, but to me, it's got really poor writing, and despite its poor writing, I'm holding on to hope that Season 2 can expand on these things, but we will see. I hope I changed a few of your minds. Let me know what you think below. I've got to go take a shower and try to get all this sewer water off of me.